Adolf Hitler is one of the most well-known and revered figures in history. As the leader of Nazi Germany, he orchestrated both World War II and the Holocaust events that lead to the death of at least 40 million people. In the ensuing decades, he was the subject of countless books, documentaries, and TV shows. This list presents some notable and a few lesser-known facts about him. Adolf Hitler was almost Adolf Schicklgruber, or Adolf Hitler. His father, Alois, was born out of wedlock to Maria Anna Schicklgruber and given a surname. However, when he was about 14 years old, Alois decided to adopt the last name of his stepfather, Johann Georg Hitler, who some speculated was actually his biological father. On the legal documents, Hitler was given as a new last name, though the reason for the spelling change is unknown. Alois Hitler was married twice and had several children before taking Clara Pöllers as the third wife. The couple had 6 children, though only Adolf and his sister reached adulthood. Adolf had a difficult relationship with his father, who died in 1903, but he adored his mother and was reportedly grief-stricken by the death from breast cancer in 1907. While much has been made of Hitler's failed career as an artist, he was rejected by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts and lived in poverty trying to sell his work. His interest in art seemed only to increase after he became Führer. While Hitler favored the idealized work of classical Greece in Rome, he was highly critical of contemporary movements such as Impressionism, Cubism, and Dada. In the 1930s, Nazis began moving such degenerative art from German museums. Modern works by Paul Klee, Pablo Picasso, Wilhelm Lemberg, and Emil Nolde were later shown in a 1937 multi-city exhibition and described as cultural documents of the decadent work of Bolsheviks and Jews. Throughout the war, Hitler ordered the systematic looting of artworks on an unprecedented scale. Reportedly, his most coveted stolen item was the Gehand altarpiece. This and other works were intended to fill a Planet Super Museum in Linz, Austria, known as the Führer Museum. When he committed suicide in 1945, Hitler was wearing the Iron Cross First Class medal earned for his service in World War I. The honor was especially important to Hitler, who had portrayed himself as a hero during the conflict. Although he was wounded during the First Battle of Somme, recent research challenges Hitler's account of his war experience. Some believe that he saw little, if any, frontline action and instead was a runner at a relatively safe regiment headquarters. This will counter his claims that he was in danger probably every day. In addition, while he stated that he was temporarily blinded during a mustard gas attack in 1980, purported medical documents state that he suffered from hysterical blindness. He was recuperating when Germany surrendered. Oddly, his station for the Iron Cross First Class fails to mention a specific incident of bravery, leading some research to speculate that it was given to honor Hitler's length of service and his general likability with officers, notably Hugo Getman, a Jewish lieutenant who recommended that Hitler receive the award. Perhaps superior by his earlier poverty, Hitler seemed determined to amass a personal fortune. Much of his money came from predictable sources, siphoning off government money and accepting donations from corporations. However, he also undertook more creative schemes. After becoming chancellor, he notably ordered the government to buy copies of the Mein Kampf to give as state wedding gifts to newlyweds, leading to hefty royalties for Hitler. In addition, he refused to pay income tax. He used his vast wealth, which some estimated was about 5 billion, to amass an extensive art collection, purchase fine furnishing, and acquire various properties. After the war, his estate was given to Bavaria. In 1939, a Swedish legislator nominated Hitler for the Nobel Peace Prize. Although he intended its joke, few found it amusing. Instead, it created an uproar, and the nomination was quickly withdrawn. Not that Hitler would have wanted or even been able to accept the award. In 1936, a German journalist, Karl von Ossietzky, a vocal critic of Hitler, had been named the winner of the 1935 Peace Prize. The gesture was seen as cancer of Nazism and an insult to Germany. As a result, Hitler barred all Germans from accepting a Nobel Prize and created the German National Prize for Art and Science as an alternative. The three Germans who subsequently won Nobels during the Third Reich were forced to decline their awards, although they later received diplomas and medals. In 1924, while in prison for high treason, Hitler began writing what would later be considered on one of the world's most dangerous books. In Mein Kampf, which was initially published in 2 volumes, Hitler chronicled his life and presented his anarchist ideology. He claimed to have become a fanatical anti-Semite while living in Vienna. Although it initially had only limited success, Mein Kampf's popularity grew as did that of Hitler and the Nazis. A Bible of National Socialism, it was recorded reading in Germany, and by 1939 more than 5 million copies had been sold. After Hitler's death, the book was banned in Germany and other countries, and the German state of Bavaria, which held the copyright, refused to grant publishing rights. However, some foreign publishers continued to print the book, and in 2016 it entered the public domain after the copyright expired. Days later, a heavily noted Mein Kampf was published in Germany for the first time since 1945. It became a bestseller. On April 3, 1945, with the war lost and Soviet troops advancing, Hitler committed suicide in his underground bunker in Berlin, shooting himself. Eva Braun, whom he had recently married, also took her own life. According to Hitler's wish, their bodies were burned and then buried. At least, that's the widely accepted version of his death. Almost immediately, conspiracy theories began, thanks in part to the Soviets. They initially claimed that they were unable to confirm that Hitler was dead, and later spread rumors that he was alive and being protected by the West. Then praised by US press, Harry Truman, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin stated that he didn't know Hitler's fate. According to later reports, however, the Soviets recovered his burned remains, which were identified through dental records. The body was secretly buried before being exhumed and cremated, The ashes being scattered in 1970, though a piece of skull bearing a single gunshot wound and not found until 1946 was kept. Such news failed to stem the doubts, however, and they only increased in 2009 when researchers determined that the skull fragment actually belonged to a woman. And that's all for today. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe us.